The only results from the Iowa caucus at this hour are chaos and confusion.
What happens if they have an election and nobody wins?
A lot of zeros.
Or maybe everyone wins.
There ain't any results.
Iowa is supposed to give the search for a Democratic nominee a little more clarity. But yet, all we have is confusion.
The roadies are cleaning up and we have not one single result.
This is a disaster.
In the end, there are numbers. So where are the freaking numbers?
To say this is embarrassing for the Democratic Party is a massive understatement. What happens here in Iowa is supposed to be their shop window. And yet, what are they advertising to America? The fact that a party that says it wants to reorganize Americans' healthcare, their tax system, can't actually seem to run an election.
So what went wrong? The voting took place at 1,679 separate caucuses right across the state. The managers of each caucus were supposed to report the results of their votes via a smartphone app. But by 9 o'clock last night, many caucus managers were reporting via chat groups and emails that they couldn't get the app to work. The Democrats had a backup system, a phone line to report the results, but that quickly became inundated. This result is further complicated by the fact that each caucus manager has to report 2 sets of votes. The first vote and then a second when supporters of candidates who didn't get 15% in the first round have to pick a second choice. So with so many partial reported results floating around the system, the Democrats say they need more time to ensure the integrity of the outcome.
My number one priority has been on ensuring the accuracy and integrity of the results. And we have been working all night to be in the best position to report results.
The delay in results has probably helped this man most, former Vice President Joe Biden. From the partial results we've had, he seems to have had a very bad night, but now he's able to question the process and the result. Conversely, this man seems to have lost most from the delay. Again, from the partial results, Pete Buttigieg seems to have done far better than expected, but his momentum is checked by uncertainty.
So we don't know all the results. But we know by the time it's all said and done, Iowa, you have shocked the nation. Because by all indications, we are going on to New Hampshire victorious.
President Trump may be the big winner from all this. He certainly thinks so. The Democrat caucus is an unmitigated disaster. Nothing works, he tweeted. The only person that can claim a very big victory in Iowa last night is Trump. He now goes on to his third State of the Union speech in Washington tonight with the wind in his sails. As the old saying goes, you only have one chance to make a first impression, and it's probably fair to say the first impression many Americans will get from this Democratic race is not a good one.
David Grossman there. Well, joining us now, Bill Palatucci, who served on the Trump transition team. Lara Brown, who worked in Bill Clinton's administration, is now the director of the Graduate School of Political Management at George Washington University. And the Republican strategist Whit Ayres, author of How Republicans Can Elect a President in the New America. Welcome to you all. What a 24 hours. And I guess for Democrats, Lara, you didn't think you'd have to be sitting here defending how a party could be so badly on the back foot so early in this race.
Well, I think that's right. But if you really have a sense of Iowa and the Iowa caucus's process, you know that legitimacy questions have been brewing in Iowa really since about 2008, when we started to see how the caucuses could be used as an end around to the primaries, and how that really became a way to change sort of the final results that would look a little bit different than the rest of the states.
As a homegrown Iowan, Whit, is this the end of the road for Iowa coming first? Are people done with the whole caucus system after this?
I don't know that it's the end of the road for Iowa coming first, but it probably is and should be the end of the caucus system. We're only down to 6 states left that use caucuses. They'll select 5% of the Democratic delegates. That's down substantially from 2016. The problem is that 2 of those 6 states are 2 of the first 4 contests in the Democratic nominating process, with Iowa and Nevada.
And we should explain the caucus is basically a gathering of neighbors, but it's very time consuming. You need to be there, you need to give up your time, And there is a feeling, it's less legitimate than just sending somebody into a booth and ticking a box.
Well, it's public. You don't have a private ballot. It takes an enormous amount of time. If you're not mobile, if you don't happen to be there at that time, you can't participate. And it's totally unrepresentative of the voters in the state and probably of the Democratic voters in Iowa.
Although Barack Obama would probably take issue with all that, having when he won the Iowa caucuses, when he ran for the first time and beating Hillary Clinton, I think Barack Obama would probably tell you, I like the Iowa caucus progress. Worked pretty good for me.
It does skew the sense of the race. I mean, last time round for the Republicans, I think it was Ted Cruz that took the lead in Iowa, and Marco Rubio looked as if he was the winner, and people didn't take Trump seriously for another couple of weeks, right?
Depends on your perspective. It depends on where you sit the night of Iowa, or in this case, the night after Iowa. Are you in first or second or third? As I said, Barack Obama, I think, liked the Iowa caucuses very, very much.
And that's why it hasn't changed. I mean, we should just sort of put out there that, generally speaking, if the nominee has won Iowa and if that nominee becomes president, there is less interest in changing the system than, in fact, if there is a split or a change or a different result.
So looking at what we've got so far, it is very partial, lots of caveats, but it looks as if Pete Buttigieg was taking the lead there, Bernie Sanders also on the popular vote. Can you see the party going in such different directions with these two? I mean, what happens?
Yes.
Well, that's one of the challenges for the Democrats. Can they unite after a night like that in Iowa? And can they unite? We'll see what happens in New Hampshire and Nevada and South Carolina. Can they come back together? Can they unite? You've got Warren and Sanders way out to the left, Mayor Pete and Biden in the middle, Bloomberg out there in the hinterlands. And so
they're saying that Bloomberg's the real winner because he didn't show up.
True, too.
That's right. We saw the same thing in 2016, where Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders basically split the vote in Iowa. So this has been a long brewing division within the Democratic coalition. And I will tell you, if Bernie Sanders does as well in New Hampshire as he did in Iowa, the center-left establishment is going to panic, and they are going to look for somebody to stop him. If Joe Biden's a guy to stop him, they'll go with him. But if he looks weak, then it opens the door for Michael Bloomberg.
What is amazing is how easily this is a distraction for where we are in Washington. We've got the impeachment trial ending tomorrow. We've got the State of the Union address by President Trump tonight in the middle of the impeachment trial, and yet he's coming on and saying they're the losers.
Well, thank you to the Democrats in Iowa, the Iowa Democratic Party, to give Donald Trump the opportunity to look even more presidential tonight as he walks into the House of Representatives and gives his State of the Union.
I'm not going to let you get away with that, Bill. He is facing impeachment. He is one of only 3 men in history to be a candidate for an American presidential impeachment.
I don't mean to make light of impeachment,
no,
but as it means for the November election, it is meaningless. It is baked into the cake so far, what we like to say. Those who like Donald Trump are going to stick with him. Those who don't like him think he should be impeached. I think voters have a very short memory, and so by the time we get to November, lots of other events will have happened, and impeachment will be a very distant memory.
Well, I think that's all true, but I think there's this issue where every single Republican who voted either to block witnesses or to acquit is now going to be responsible for every act of wrongdoing, abuse of power that this president engages in between now and Election Day. So, in fact, this is now not just a President Trump problem. It has become an entire Republican
Party. Has to be right, doesn't it? When you say baked into the cake, what are you saying? That all the Republicans in the Senate now have to just wipe their hands of having a president who has literally bribed a foreign government to do his political handiwork? I mean, how great does that make you feel as a Republican?
Two completely different questions. I thought you were asking me about Donald Trump and what does impeachment mean from here.
But the point is whether they should be different questions. I mean, they start from the same premise, don't they?
The facts they are different questions. If you look at, I'm sure Whit will attest to this, the president's numbers over the last 2 years, they are very, very steady, regardless of what has happened. Lara is exactly right on a state-by-state basis. But you're talking about Joe Manchin in West Virginia, or Susan Collins in Maine, or Cory Gardner in Colorado. The effect of impeachment means a lot more to them than it does to Donald Trump.
But basically, Emily, what impeachment has done is make the red states and districts redder and the blue states and districts bluer. It has intensified pre-existing feelings about Donald Trump, but has changed very few minds.
But I guess for a home audience, what we can't understand is America now saying this kind of act, this kind of behavior, this kind of abuse of power is tolerated?
No, that's not
but
that's not what most Republicans are saying. Lamar Alexander certainly didn't say that. What he said was, this is bad.
He didn't want to call witnesses to actually hear those points being made.
And his point was, why do we have one more witness to prove what's already been proven? His argument is, listen, we're within 9 months of a presidential election. We have the consent of the governed, not the consent of the Senate. Why don't we let the American people digest all of this and make the decision rather than have the Senate?
There's a problem with that. First of all, impeachment exists within the Constitution because the framers were very clear that there might be presidential abuses of power inside of election years. In other words, in between these times when the voters mattered. And there was a sense that you had to protect the institutions and create those precedents so that the opposite parties would not enact the same way.
But
and
isn't
this
the point, Lara,
where
that Whit has thrown it back to the Democrats now and said, over to you. You beat him fair and square in the ballot. You do it by getting the vote. And the Democrats don't seem to have a response to him still, 4 years on.
Well, but I don't think that that's fair. I think it is the reality that all parties go through a nomination process, which is usually pretty tough, and there is a division. And they usually do come back together by the time of the convention. It's also true that this president has had a majority that has disapproved of him his entire time in office.
Bill, you've worked closely with Donald Trump. Do you think that he has now rewritten the Republican Party? I mean, once is insurgency. If he does it again, that's who you are.
I think that's largely the case. I think the Republican Party will have to examine itself after this election and maybe after the next 4 years and say, are we the party of Donald Trump, or do we have other things we want to do, or a different way that we want to say it? I think Laura just talked about his approval ratings. The approval rating of the economy is very, very high right now. And we'll see.
But his favorability is very low.
It's only very, very fourth. I understand that. So what is the choice going to be? Two things. What is the choice going to be come November? Is it Donald Trump versus the economy? And then also, secondly, who is he running against? These far leftist candidates like Warren and Sanders, or somebody more in the middle of the road?
We've run out of road and time, but thank you all very much indeed. There was plenty more of this sort of thing coming to you via our new BBC podcast. It's called Americast, with John Sopel and with me, launching this week. And we have a world-exclusive interview to kick things off. So I hope you subscribe to that, however you subscribe to your podcasts. Back to you, Katie.